Have you ever noticed how no matter how far you've come in life, there's always someone who wants to remind you of where you started? Maybe it's a family member who still talks to you like you're that uncertain young person you were 50 years ago. Maybe it's an old friend who never fails to mention the time you messed up, even though it happened decades ago. Or maybe it's someone who just can't seem to let go of something you did or didn't do way back when. You've grown, you've healed, you've changed, but to them, you're still the same person you used to be. And let's be honest, that can hurt. It's frustrating when people don't acknowledge your progress. It's painful when they seem stuck in the past while you're doing your best to move forward. And it can make you second-guess everything you've worked so hard to rebuild. But here's the truth. When people keep bringing up your past, it often says more about them than it does about you. So today, we're going to talk about why this happens, not just once, but over and over. And most importantly, how you can handle it without letting it drag you down. 1. They haven't healed from their own pain. Let's begin with something that might surprise you. A lot of the time, when someone keeps bringing up your past, it's not about holding you accountable. It's about their own pain. People who haven't healed from their own wounds often have a hard time watching others heal. They see your growth, and instead of feeling happy for you, it reminds them of the work they haven't done for themselves. Take Margaret, for example. She's 68 now and living a peaceful life in North Carolina. But in her early 20s, Margaret struggled. She was in and out of toxic relationships, made decisions she later regretted, and spent years trying to find her footing. And she did. Through faith, therapy, and a whole lot of inner work, Margaret turned her life around. But every time she ran into one particular childhood friend, it was the same story. Remember when you used to cry on my couch about that guy? Or, hard to believe you're so put together now. Always said with a smile. But the message was clear. I still see you as the woman you were, not the woman you've become. For a while, Margaret took it personally. She wondered if maybe she hadn't really changed, or if those old stories still defined her. But the truth was simple. That friend hadn't healed. And Margaret's piece only made that clearer. When someone hasn't faced their own pain, they'll project it onto others. Your healing becomes a mirror, reflecting what they're still struggling to accept. And instead of looking inward, they reach for something easier, your past. They scratch the scar just to see if it still hurts. But you get to decide whether you let that scar bleed again or not. 2. They want to control you. Now here's another reason people bring up your past. And this one's a little tougher to admit. Some folks don't just bring it up out of pain. They do it out of control. There are people out there who use your past as a way to keep you small. It's not that they want to connect with you. It's not that they want to help you grow. They want to remind you of your lowest points, so you don't get too confident, too free, or too far away from them. That's exactly what happened to Frank. Frank spent most of his life trying to get it right. He had a tough upbringing, made some poor financial decisions in his 30s, and even had a bit of a temper when he was younger. But over time, he became someone else entirely, calmer, wiser, more grounded. He paid off his debts, started mentoring young men at church, and repaired broken relationships with his kids. But one family member, someone he deeply respected, just couldn't let it go. Anytime Frank spoke up in family gatherings, they'd joke, well, as long as Frank doesn't blow up like he used to. Or when he gave advice to a younger cousin, they'd mutter, takes a lot of nerve coming from you. And just like that, all of Frank's progress felt invisible. That's because this person wasn't offering constructive reminders. They were trying to keep Frank anchored in guilt. As long as he felt small, they could stay in control. As long as he doubted himself, they felt bigger. That's not love, that's manipulation. And manipulation always wears a disguise. Sometimes it looks like honesty, or even humor. But deep down, it's about keeping power. What Frank eventually realized was this. He didn't owe anyone an apology for being a better man. His transformation didn't need their approval. His life, his choices, And the peace he found along the way were already proof enough. If someone uses your past to make you feel ashamed of your present, it's not about your redemption. It's about their resistance to it. And the moment you stop trying to convince them, you take your power back. 3. They're afraid of your growth. Sometimes people bring up your past because they're afraid of your growth. Your healing, your transformation, your newfound clarity, it's intimidating. Especially to someone who hasn't changed. When you rise, you become a mirror. And not everyone likes what they see staring back at them. That's what happened with Robert. Robert grew up in a tough part of Chicago. His teen years were rough, wrong friends, a few run-ins with the law, and a lot of pain. But over the years, he turned things around. He earned his GED, started a small business, and even got featured in a local newspaper for giving back to his community. But when he went back to his old neighborhood, nothing had changed, except him. His friends still hung out on the same corners, told the same stories, and laughed about the same mistakes. "Remember when you almost got locked up?" one of them said, slapping him on the back. "Man, you used to be wild." At first, Robert laughed along, but deep down, it stung. He wasn't that man anymore. But they needed him to be. Because if he had changed, then maybe they could have too. And that kind of truth can be hard to face. People who fear your growth will always try to shrink it. Not because they hate you, but because they're afraid of being left behind. They'd rather rewind your story than write a new chapter of their own. But you're not responsible for their fear. You're responsible for your future. And if someone can't accept the path you're on, that's their burden to carry, not yours. 4. They're comfortable with the old you. And speaking of comfort, sometimes that's exactly what keeps people holding on to the older version of you. Because for many people, the version of you that existed 20 or 30 years ago feels safer, more familiar, and more predictable. They knew how to handle that version of you. They knew what to expect, what to say, and how to treat you. But now you've got boundaries. You've got clarity. You've grown in ways that maybe even surprise yourself sometimes. And not everyone knows how to meet you in this new season of your life. Linda, for example, used to be the soft one in her friend group. Always agreeable, always saying yes, even when she meant no. For years, people treated her like the person they could joke about, lean on, or even dismiss without consequence. But after a painful divorce and a journey of deep self-reflection, Linda began to change. She started setting limits. She spoke up when something didn't feel right. She stopped laughing at jokes that were made at her expense. And what she noticed was that some friends didn't like that. They still poked at the old version of her, teasing her about being sensitive or saying things like, "There she goes again acting like a therapist." But what they were really saying was, "We don't like this version of you. The one who stands tall. The one who's not so easy to push around anymore. Your transformation disrupts the roles you used to play in other people's lives." And when that happens, not everyone will adjust. Some people will double down and treat you like you haven't changed. Not because they don't see it, but because accepting it would mean they have to change too. And that's not something everyone's ready for. What you can do, you've earned the right to grow. You've earned the peace that comes with healing. And you don't need anyone's permission to keep moving forward. So take a deep breath. Remind yourself that you're not who you used to be. You've come a long way. You have every right to protect the space you've created. You've already walked through the fire. You don't need to sit in the smoke just to make others comfortable. Stop asking for permission to grow. Stop shrinking just to make others feel secure. Stop playing small in rooms where you were never meant to stay. If someone can't accept the new you, they don't get to have access to the real you. It's not about cutting people off. It's about protecting your peace. Because you've come too far to let someone else drag you back into who you used to be. Let them say what they will. Let them bring up old stories. Let them linger in the past if they want to. Because that's where they'll stay. You've got a life to live now. One that's richer, fuller, and more meaningful than anything you left behind. And if someone can't celebrate that with you, they were never meant to be part of your future. You are not the same person you were 10, 20, or even 50 years ago. And that's something to be proud of. Here's to walking boldly in who you've become, to protecting your peace, and to never letting someone else's memory of you define the rest of your story.